Hey, my people, I am thrilled to have Afrika Afeni Mills. That's right, Afeni with the A, all right? You see it with an E, but you pronounce it with an A, all
Yeah.
right? So get it right, folks. I know there's a temptation to say Afeni, and trust me, I had the temptation, but that's why I asked first. We should ask people how they want us to pronounce their names instead of doing what sometimes the people do to me, some of the older folks that I play pickleball with, that they'll call me Robert. And I'm like, hey, my name is Roberto. There's an O at the end. And yes, you should try to roll your R because my name is Roberto,
Yeah.
not Robert, not Bob, not Bobby, Roberto. And no, you can't call me Rob because I don't know you like that. When we know each other and we got a good flow, then you could call me Rob. That's for my people, all right, in a circle. But if I don't know you like that, don't chop my name down. Don't give me another name. Call me by the name that my mama gave me and my father, by the way, because I grew up in a two-parent household. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we have Afrika Afeni Mills. She is doing awesome work. But before we get into the work, I want to start with your name because
Yes.
you have a beautiful and powerful name. And I believe names have stories behind them. Some
Absolutely.
people's stories are more elaborate than others, but stories nonetheless.
Yes.
So I want to start there because this is our first time really connecting like that. Even though we've had connection on the online platforms, this is the
Yeah.
first time I've been able to speak to you straight up. And
Yeah.
I'd like to get to know a little something about the folks that I'm building community with
Yes.
and I'm interviewing as a
Yes.
way to just make it a little more personal.
Totally. Yes. Let me. So I'm gonna steal this joke from Uzo Aduba. She was just like, "Yes, my name is Uzo Amaka. I got it for my birthday." I was like, "I love that. I love that. Yes, I got this name for my birthday, and it was
Hey,
from my mom and dad, who, because I was born in the mid '70s, and my parents weren't quite like official members of the Black Panther Party, but they were member approximate. And this is something that was part of their lives. And so when I was born, they were like, yes, we want our baby girl to remember who her ancestors are. We want to name her after the motherland, and we're going to spell it with a K because that was the original spelling before it was changed. And then Afeni is after Afeni Shakur, who is Tupac Shakur's mom, who was a member of the Black Panther Party. And so I don't know if they knew this at the time, but her Afeni means dear one in Yoruba, I believe. And so I'm just like, oh, that's beautiful. So yep, that's the story behind my name. Yes.
oh,
Yes.
that's great. That's great. That's awesome. I'm glad you shared that. I don't know if a lot of folks ask about that, but to me, sometimes I'll read a person's name and there's a uniqueness, right?
Yes.
There's something particular. And
Yes.
so with your name, every time I was seeing it on Twitter, I'm like, I
Thank
wonder
you.
what the
Yes.
story is. And so,
Absolutely. And when I was a little kid, I didn't appreciate the beauty of it. Because like when you're a kid, you don't want to really stand out. You want to be like other kids. And the kids were not kind to me. They teased me a lot for my name, but I grew to really to really appreciate my name. So it definitely is a gift for my parents. Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you for sharing that gift.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
So much to talk about today. I'm excited to learn from you,
Hey.
following some of your work, and really interested to hear about your book, hear about your approach, hear about your experiences,
Yeah.
and hear some insight that could be helpful not just to me but to our audience. And
Yes.
so I want to start with your book.
Okay.
The title of your book is Open Windows, Open Minds. I love that. Subtitle, Developing Anti-Racist Pro-Human Students. Wow.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
that's a mouthful.
It is.
But I love it. I'm drawn in. I'm
Yes.
drawn in. So,
Yes.
what is an anti-racist pro-human student and how do you develop such a student?
Yes. And so for me, I'll tell you a little bit about where the approach to that title came from, and it'll connect to your question. So thinking about, like, I've had an opportunity to, over the past years, I've been an educator for over 20 years. It's about 23 years, and did a lot of work on culturally responsive teaching and learning, which is so, I still don't feel like people get it, right? But it's still doing that work on culturally responsive teaching and learning. And then as I was thinking about like, what does that mean for all students? And what does this work look like for students who are not Black and brown students? I was like, yeah, white students are, when we think about words like at risk and underserved, I'm like, yeah, white students who are not being taught to be anti-racist are at risk and they are being underserved, right? I don't think we think about that enough. And so when I think about like, how do you create an anti-racist pro-human student, is that we diligently work toward making sure that we center our shared humanity in the work that we do in schools, right? So I think that like racialization causes a disruption to that. And it was done intentionally, right? To subjugate, to oppress, right? To separate people and to develop a hierarchy. And so this approach to teaching really is about like helping to interrupt that, right? To interrupt that concept of division and subjugation, and really helping students like using that, the concept of windows and mirrors to truly see yourself and the possibilities that exist for you as a human member of the human family, and see other people with respect and dignity and celebration. So that's what it means to me. And then how do we, I mean, this is definitely going to be something we dig into a bit more, but I think we create students that way by making sure we do that work ourselves, right? Because most of us were not taught in our K-12 schools how to have that perspective or mindset. So I think we really have to begin with our self-work, and then we share that work that we do with giving students opportunities to do the same.
That's an interesting framing when you say white students are at risk when
Yes.
they're not being taught, and I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but when they're not being taught to understand and identify how racialization is impacting their own lens, their own experiences.
Yeah, no, you got it. You got it. Yep, that's it. That's it.
And I think that's a great framing. I think I would love to hear more people maintain that perspective and talk about at risk in that sense, right?
Yes.
Because when we're talking about at risk, it's often talking about at risk of dropping out,
Yes.
At risk of low grades, at risk of ending up in prison.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
obviously often the conversation is centered around students of color, particularly Black students,
Yes.
right? Students of African descent.
Yes.
And brown students, Spanish speaking students,
yep.
And generally low income.
Yes. Yes.
And not that that conversation should be dismissed, because it shouldn't, right? There's relevance in engaging in that conversation.
Yes.
And I do believe there's just as much importance in engaging in this conversation in what you're framing in terms of like, hey, our white students need particular supports also for
Yes.
their areas of risk.
Yes, absolutely, right? Like, I know we all see it, and I think we need to call it out more, like you were saying too, right? Like when we see things like January 6th, when we see racially motivated shootings and violence, right? When we see those things that are often perpetrated by young white folks, specifically young white men, right? It's just like, yeah, it's absolutely a risk, right?
So let's get into some tangible ways that administrators and teachers could do this work. And what you just said is a common thread when I'm interviewing folks who are doing the work that we do, right? You got to do the self-work.
Totally.
All right. So we've established that.
Yes.
And I want you to share with us, what are 3 action steps that administrators, teachers could take to transform their instructional practices? I know that a lot of your work is grounded in transforming instructional practices and providing the necessary supports, providing the training, really coaching people up, challenging and encouraging them. And so we're obviously not going to resolve everything in the short time that we have together. But I think there's some practical advice, some steps that you could offer folks for them to engage now.
Absolutely. And so I'll say just a little bit more tangibly, because I think sometimes when people hear the reference to self-work, it's just like, okay, I will read a book, I will listen to a podcast, I will watch a documentary. But I would say, honestly, the first step is kind of like really also realizing the need to operationalize your self-work, right? And so like whether that means you going through like looking at the stages of racial identity development, if it means looking at your own racial autobiography, if it means looking at your community where you live and the who are the authors of the books you read, who are you voting for, who are you like, who are the voices that influence you, like who are you surrounded by, and what does that mean, right? Like what does that mean? So taking that and taking an honest and vulnerable and humble look, right? And then being like, okay, so I've done this self-work, and so I know I need to be able to bring that into the school space, right, for administrators. And so then that means I would say like operationalize your self-work. And then like that next step would be for me is creating the structures to sustain those conversations in that transformative practice. Because I think in my experience, so much of what has happened in the past is that folks may have an awakening and start to be like, oh, we need to do something culturally responsive or something anti-racist. And so we'll bring a speaker in at the beginning of the year in the summer, and we'll have an all staff discussion, not even discussion, presentation. And then the work is not even made to come to life in the school space. And I think the administrators have a lot of influence over what can happen. So creating spaces for people to have that ongoing work and protecting that teacher collaboration time to infuse, not infuse out, because I don't want to say infuse because I don't want it to come across as if it's an add-on, because it isn't. To make sure that this is the lens with which we are doing all of the work. And so create those spaces so you don't have to worry, teachers don't have to worry about being like, I don't have time. There's no time in the day set aside for us to do this work, right? And it's something I just really don't have the space to add on another thing. And then as far as like the next step that we would be able to take is to make sure that not only do the structures exist, right, and that we're having a clear path to doing this work that we need to do to really change our practices and our instruction, right? But that we're also making sure that we are communicating that with the larger school community. Because I think a lot of times, like when I see this work, it's too often that there are like pockets of teachers who have decided that they want to take on the work, and it's not something that's part of the whole school community. And so I would say that that needs to be part of the work for this, like not just the teaching staff, but the whole staff of the whole staff in the community, the school board, right? The site council, like all of the parts of the community, is making sure that that work gets spread intentionally and in a way that's going to be ongoing. So it's not like we're just going to do this year, but we're going to do this. This is our 5-year plan, because every year we're going to get better at this, right? And it will be a long-term commitment. So yeah, I would say operationalize self-work, create the structures to sustain the work, and make sure the work is pervasive throughout the whole school community.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the focus on structures, systems, looking at the whole community, really working with all the stakeholders.
Yes.
So that things don't get lost in the sauce.
That's right.
It's absolutely easy for this work to become an afterthought.
Yes.
And you have a subcommittee, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now we have a diversity committee. That's their work. They're going to drive that.
Yes.
Maybe the committee experiences some fatigue because oftentimes it ends up being too much work for a subcommittee.
Right.
Because
absolutely.
The work is not spread out, right? It should be just a part of what we do. It's a part of our practice, it's a part of who we are.
Right. That's exactly right. Because that's the thing that doesn't really help. Like if you have pockets of teachers who are doing the work and then students are going to other teachers who have opted out and it's not something that's continuous, or they go into the lunchroom and they hear cafeteria workers saying things that don't align with what you're saying we believe about students and their families, right? Or they're on a bus and they're having interactions with the bus driver or with other students, like it has to be something that everyone is committed to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so based on your experience, I've read some stuff on your website that talked about what white anti-racist, anti-bias practitioners wish they would have known when they were K-12 students. And so I'm interested to hear some of that feedback that you've received in workshops you've done. What are at least 3 things that you've heard folks say that they wish they would have known, or white brothers and sisters, or white allies, or white co-conspirators that are engaged in anti-bias, anti-racist practice. What's some of that feedback? What are some things, at least 3 things, you've heard from them that they wish they would have known in their K-12 experience as students?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is that so many of them have said they really wish they would have known what it would have been like to have Black and brown teachers and to know Black and brown people personally. So many of them were just like, I didn't have a Black teacher ever in my K-12 experience, or the first time I had a Black teacher was when I went to college, right? Or like, so they didn't really have the opportunity to know not only educators, but people in their community because of the way that communities are still segregated, right? That they didn't get a chance to know Black and brown people. And so they're like, I really wanted that. I really longed for that as a kid, right? And so it wasn't something that I had access to, but it's something that I wanted, because as they got to be adults, they realized that a lot of the messages that they had about people who were racially or culturally or ethnically different from them were false narratives and deficit narratives. And it only came from the media and from people who also didn't know, have relationships with Black and brown people. So definitely what it would have been like to have relationships with people in schools and in their communities who were racially different. They also talked about they would like to have known what it looked like to be a white person who works together in solidarity with folks of color, and that, that whiteness doesn't have to mean colonizer and oppressor. It could mean abolitionist. It could mean freedom fighter. It could mean there's so many other possibilities that they were never even taught that there were white folks who had done this work. And then I think also too that they talked about really wanting to have known that race was a social construct that was created so like we were talking about earlier, to subjugate and to separate and oppress, right? That it was created that, that whiteness was created as this, this category of people who were allegedly superior to everyone else. And they were like, we wish that we had known that that was not true. Because growing up with that falsehood really just, like they see now how it has played out in society at every level. And they wish that from the time that they were really young, that they had the opportunity to really know those things. Yeah.
What's interesting about this work, and now we were talking about our white brothers and sisters, but we could apply this in different ways, right? We could take different topic areas and apply it to our own biases that we've struggled with or whatnot.
Yeah.
This stuff is so deeply ingrained that you can see why it's so difficult for folks to kind of get over the hump sometimes, or so difficult to do this work, to engage in this work. Like, it takes a real commitment. It takes true intentionality, because all that stuff is playing in your head and has permeated your being.
That's a perfect word. Yes.
For years.
Yes.
And now you have folks, right? And depending on who you're encountering or what you're encountering, it could either hit you super hard.
Yep.
Right? Because whoever's delivering the message, they may not be thinking about that, right? They may not be thinking about your background and thinking about like, hey, well, let me consider my approach in order to get you closer, right? Because ultimately, what we should be working towards is proximity. I like to talk about proximity a lot, and Brian Stevens says, just mercy. And, right? And really, when we're looking at how different folks engage in this type of work, right? And when I say this, I'm referring to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That there's all types of different approaches.
Yes.
And some folks might have an approach that's too soft, right? Too passive, and then it allows you to continue in your ways. And your ways may be harmful.
Right.
So certain stuff that you've been living with might be reinforced by a practitioner's passiveness.
Yes.
And then you have the other extreme, where you have practitioners that are pushing so hard that it might shut you down, or it might reinforce the harmful stuff that has permeated, as I previously said, your being. So I think it's really important for us to keep the conversation alive in terms of like the certain things that you just mentioned in terms of the feedback you received, like, oh, I didn't know about white abolitionists, and there's a couple other terms that you mentioned, but I think it's so important to offer that spectrum.
Yes.
Of individuals who are modeling examples, both positive and negative.
Yep.
And then also obviously like the framework for talking about, you know, this concept of racialization, including whiteness.
Yes.
So that people are walking away with greater understanding, but
Yes.
they're also walking away with a clear picture of who they can read up on and who they could potentially identify as role models that can inspire their work. Yes. And then, you know, who they should know about that, like, hey, these individuals that did this way back then, there's a parallel with some of these individuals that you're seeing today that are causing great harm in our society.
Yes.
I don't think I need to name names, but there's some obvious individuals.
Right? We know.
So, you know, thank you for sharing some of that feedback that you've heard from folks.
Yes.
You know, I want us, and everybody might not agree with what I'm saying. That's fine. I don't care if everybody agrees with me or not.
Same.
But my desire is for us to be able to keep this conversation alive in a way where we can come to the table.
Right.
And listen to each other, learn from each other.
Yes.
And you know, some of the feedback I've seen folks have shared with you based on the work that you've led seems to indicate that that's happening. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I mean, I really truly believe it because, like, you know, all of, you know, we think about being an educator and the way we approach teaching and learning with students. And we know that students are not in a space where they can learn if their amygdala hijacked and they're really going into that, like, you know, that panic zone, right? We know that about students and we talk about avoiding that with them. And I'm like, same thing, right? Because we're all human beings. That same thing happens when people get like into that panic space. They're not able to learn and it's hard to change. So we definitely have to make sure it's both. It's like, don't be like this, but here are some examples of who you can emulate, right? Yeah, it's both. It's both.
So talking about people that you can emulate and people that make an impact in your life, this is one of my staple questions because it's fascinating to me to hear the different responses and who folks are influenced by.
Yeah.
And so if you had the opportunity to have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Right now, honestly, because I'm like, you know, I've thought about this over my life, and it's, you know, the answer changes depending on the season of life that you're in.
Sure.
Right now, for me, it's Viola Davis. I really want to spend time.
I heard a quote from her last night. There was a reel that played, and I didn't see it because it was Lorena was playing it, but I heard the voice, and I'm like, that's Viola.
That's how we know that's Viola. That's fine. That's fine. But seriously, like earlier this year, and I am an avid reader. I love listening to audiobooks also. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll get the physical copy and then I'll get the audiobook too, and I read along. And
you and I have some synergy because I'm the same way.
We really do. We really do. And so that's one of the most beautiful experiences I had this year was listening to Viola Davis read her own memoir. And there was so much for me, like resonance in her story. And I loved like not only being able to bear witness to the hard parts of her story and to connect with that, but also to see like, you know, just to hear her perspective, to hear her humor, to see how much work she's done, to see like to hear from her was so powerful. And then to have that followed up by seeing her in The Woman King. And I'm like, I need to meet her. I must.
She's a force.
She absolutely is.
You know, I saw Woman King and she was awesome. I mean, she's just a great actress, right?
Yes.
But I heard she was being interviewed. I think it was either right before or right after the movie came out.
Yeah.
She was being interviewed. I think I happened to stumble on this interview. Well, I wasn't pursuing it. Just, you know, it popped up in maybe the radio or elsewhere, wherever it was.
Yeah.
Listening to her talk about some of the things that she had to deal with, some of the struggles in terms of her Blackness, So
Yes.
in terms of her
Yes.
pigmentation,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, she
right?
did.
And the messages that she had internalized from others,
Mm-hmm.
and what she had to do, like how the fact that she really had to wrestle with that, she really had to overcome that.
Yes.
And I wish I had the clip, and I don't remember word for word what she said, but I remember listening to her and just hearing the power in her voice, but also hearing the hurt.
Yes, the pain, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it was very real,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it resonated with me. I could
Definitely.
really connect with that in
Yes.
terms of stuff I've dealt with and
Yeah.
things that I've seen that don't sit right with me.
Right.
In terms of, again, the notion of blackness,
Yes.
or it's almost like you can't talk about that without the notion of whiteness, right?
Right.
And
Right. Right.
and so I appreciated the raw truth that she was sharing,
Yes.
and more so just the power, right? The push to overcome
Yes.
those negative messages that could be serious barriers to our own progress.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, she would be a great person
Right?
to have lunch with and just listen to and learn from and ask questions.
Totally. And look, serious, like following her on IG, like not only the power in her experience and her voice and all the different amazing things in her life, but she's just mad funny. Like the stuff that she posts, I'm like, I encourage everybody to follow her because she just like just the stuff she posts is just so like I feel like I've gotten to, even though I don't know her, right? I feel like I've gotten to know a bit about her by the things she chooses to post. And I'm just like, I just really would love to know her in real life. Yeah.
Well, if you end up having lunch with her, I'm gonna need you to report back.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to see if I can get you in. Because it doesn't need to be me. Like, let's do it together.
Listen. You've won me over.
Yes.
So, what is a message of encouragement that you want to leave our audience with? Because
Yeah.
part of what I try to do on my platform is, no matter what we're talking about and how uncomfortable it may make people feel at times, or how negative a strand of a topic may be, because we want to have honest conversations about what's happening, especially in the realm of education and society in general.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we want to make sure that we're encouraging folks. So what's the message of encouragement that you have for the people?
Yeah, I have a twofold message of encouragement. The first one is, and I want to be able to attribute this. I don't remember who, but I think folks like you can like definitely be able to search it to find out the source. It's I believe it's a Mexican proverb that says they tried to bury us if they didn't know we were seeds, right?
Ooh.
So like that, not only us, right, but the students that we're serving, right? There's a lot of noise out there right now. There's a lot of people trying to bury truth and wholeness, right? And love. But I'm like, but when you get those seeds in the ground and they have a good soil, right? They didn't know we were seeds. I think that's one part of the message. Then the second one is a quote that I saw by a person named Athena Singh. She says, never trust your fears. They don't know your strength. And so those two.
You shared that at a presentation recently, and I know that because somebody tweeted that and thanking you for sharing that. That was one of the questions. I was going to flip that quote as a question to have you get deeper into it. So I'm glad you shared that's one of your encouragements. I read that and I was like, wow, that's profound.
That's right. That's right. It's not to say that we're not afraid. Like we go through fears, but it doesn't mean we need to be ruled by them. It doesn't mean we need to decide by them or to have that determine what we're going to do next.
Yes.
Because that's what the things that are happening right now are by design. It's to deter people from pursuing wholeness as a society, but we can't go for it.
We haven't been given a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and self-control.
Yes. I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
So where can folks follow you? Because you're doing incredible work, and I think more people need to be connected to the work that you're doing. Where can they follow you?
Yeah, so I try to keep everything updated on my website. So it's just afrikaafenimills.com. But on the platforms, I know I'm having like I'm grappling about Twitter right now because we know what's kind of happening in that space. But I'm
Yes.
still on there, so they can find me at Afeni Mills on Twitter. I'm also like if you search for just my name under like Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. I have Open Windows, Open Minds Facebook pages and IG pages. And I genuinely, I know some people are just like, yeah, keep in touch with me. I'm like, I genuinely mean that because we need to bolster one another and stay in community with one another, right? Because we have work to do. And so I really would encourage folks to please do reach out to me and connect with me
And if
online.
folks want to buy Open Windows, Open Minds, Developing Anti-Racist, pro-human students, where should they go to buy that?
They can get it on all platforms. If they want to connect me personally, they can get it from me, and then I could try to arrange to get a little autograph in there if they wanted to get an autograph. But wherever you buy your books, you'll be able to buy the book. And so please do, because these are conversations we need to continue to have, and I'm looking forward to being in touch with those of you who are about this same work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the book is geared towards K through 12 educators, right?
I would say so. I think like that once we get into the actual classroom practices, it's probably more 3rd through 12
Okay.
for the practices, because I believe definitely that the littles need a very specific approach, and that's not the full focus of the book. But definitely I do feel, especially the racial healing first part of the book would be good for K to 12 and higher ed teachers, any teacher.
Okay.
And parents as well. Yep. Parents as
So
well.
listen, if you're in elementary, middle school, high school, you teach at any of those levels. If you're a parent and you're really questioning, you need support, you don't know where to start. So that's often what we hear from people.
Yes.
Hey, where do I start? What should I read? Who should I follow? Well, we have given you one more person who is doing amazing work and one more resource in this book. All right. And so please make sure you follow Afrika Afeni Mills and purchase the book, Open Windows, Open Minds, Developing Anti-Racist Pro-Human Students. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing and giving us some practical steps in terms of how we can engage. I'm looking forward to continuing to learn from you and see what other wonderful quotes you're going to be pulling out there that I could utilize.
Yeah.
The Mexican proverb you stated. Oh, wow. My goodness, I'm going to be sitting with that one for a bit.
Yeah, it's powerful, right?
Yeah. Deep. Well, what's next for you? Before we wrap up, I didn't have this, but what's next for you? Where can folks catch you? Are you going to be doing any presentations around soon that maybe folks should be aware of?
Yeah, well, I'm very excited to say that I will be, so this upcoming Saturday, I'll be in Cambridge, Massachusetts, presenting at the Literacy for All conference. I'll be at NCTE in Anaheim as well.
See you there.
Yes, you there. I'm excited about that. And then I found out not too long ago that I will be at South by Southwest EDU in the new year, right? So definitely, those are some solid upcoming opportunities if folks can connect with me. And then if you sign up, you'll be able to sign up for my newsletter on my website. I keep it popping with the updates and the news about any upcoming events and learning opportunities. So definitely sign up for the newsletter when you go to the website, and so you'll be able to keep abreast of those things too.
Okay, awesome. Well, you'll be in my old stomping grounds in Austin.
Yes.
If you love barbecue, Styles and Switch is our spot.
Okay, I need the legit spot recommendations. So
Styles and Switch on North Lamar.
Okay.
They're not paying me for the plug.
You just believe in the food, though.
I believe in the food. Love is love.
That's right.
And if you want some great tacos, there's everywhere. You could get a great taco over there. But I'd say Valentina's is one spot you could have in mind, and Veracruz Tacos is another one. And then there's a small little spot next to where I used to be principal. It's called One Taco.
Ooh, because I'm gonna be there for a few days, so I'm gonna write these down.
Listen, right? You know how to access me.
That's right. I know how to find you.
All right. Thanks for your time. Peace
Thank
and
you for having
blessings.
me. Same to you. Same to you.